Yes, let's talk about it indeed. Welcome back to another episode of Elaborate. I'm your host, Jake Lloyd Bacon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. We're learning, we're growing, we're doing it together. I am so excited about my guest today. Looking forward to getting to know actor, comedian, writer, producer, artist, and more. Best known as one half of JEFFSTER on the hit show Chuck, the one and only Scott Krinsky joins me. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for doing this. We're continuing these pandemic episodes of the podcast via Zoom. It still feels weird to not have somebody here on the couch. But I feel like the next best thing is this.
It's like virtual therapy.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's how my significant other has been doing hers, and I don't know that she's ever going to go back. She's like, why would I put on pants and drive? That's just adding to the stress that I have that I need therapy for.
But I do feel sometimes, even when I'm like, I have this instinct when I'm talking to someone, even virtual, to put on a mask.
Yeah, I think
you're so close. Like, I'm looking at you on the computer, and you look so close to me.
We look like we're within 6 feet of one another.
Yeah. So
have you had any of your vaccination shots?
Yeah. I'm all just recently all taken care of.
Sweet. Same. Yeah. Do you feel like it's going to be hard for you to be okay? Because I'm dealing with that. Like, now that I've cleared my window as of yesterday, as time of recording this, and I still don't feel like it's safe.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I still don't feel that different, but I guess because we've all gotten used to this new normal. I did do a quick workout in the gym for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Like, I got in and out in 30 minutes. But the last time I did that was literally the day they closed the gyms again. Whatever day that was, I think it was early June or something.
Right. Yeah. Like, they opened and reclosed them, you mean?
And I went, they opened, then they reclosed them. I went that day and I got in and out. Like, I was like, I'm just going to hit all my machines and get out in 30 minutes.
Right.
And then they closed them.
Right.
And I just, thought.
Yeah, I'm really excited about movie theaters, about being able to go sit in the theater, but I do feel like I have to go see a couple movies that I don't care about as much first, because I don't know that I'm going to be able to enjoy myself, because I think like the anxiety and the general uneasiness that now I feel in the groups is going to ruin my ability to actually enjoy whatever it is I'm watching.
I feel like movie theaters feel safer to me because
really,
you're not heavily breathing, you're not talking, and they have high ceilings, and the air is always on in the movie theater. You can always feel the air conditioner coming on and off, and the air circulating, and so that feels safer.
That doesn't give you the same weirdness that does me. I just feel like I'm just gonna be the weirdest person for like I'm gonna need like at least half of what I went through. So if this lasts, a year and 2 months, I'm gonna need like 7 months to be normal again. By the time it's gonna have a trail for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be a gradual thing, getting back to normal, and then hopefully it stays that way. And when, who knows? Right. It's so unpredictable, but I feel like we're on the road.
Well, hopefully things will be back to normal soon. Until then, though, we continue our Zoom chats here.
Yeah,
Scott, I got to say, one of the it's now I think 2 in a row where my guest has been somebody who I've never met. This is fun for me. I always like it when it's somebody who I have a bunch of mutual friends with. We've got a ton of mutual friends from stand-up and from other entertainment-y spaces, but I don't know that we ever cross paths professionally.
Yeah.
I want to say, was it 2009 that JEFFSTER performed at San Diego Comic-Con?
Yeah, that's about right, because it would have been season 2. Yeah, and we we didn't. I don't. Yeah, I don't know if we didn't go to the first Comic-Con with Zach went,
right.
But I think but I remember, yeah, it was like season 2, and then we went, I think, for 3 Comic-Cons, and the first one is when we opened that panel,
right, by actually performing. So
yeah,
that I was
Bottom Girls with Queen,
right. I was there that year, and I was working, and I feel like we may have done either some sort of interview where I was shooting something, but that was a long time ago. So as far as I'm concerned, we have never crossed paths.
Like, where would we have done that?
I feel like it might have been something in like press, like beforehand, before the actual panel, because I wasn't in the room for it. I had to watch it all. That was actually my very first San Diego Comic-Con. That was the year that I moved out to Los Angeles.
That was my first Comic-Con.
Really?
It was scary as hell. Like,
was it really?
Never been to anything like that,
and not just for it to be your first, but to be your first, and for you to be, at that level where Chuck was so huge, JEFFSTER was so huge. Like, did you even get to enjoy like what it would be like to go to a con with any anonymity? Or
I don't want to get like, I don't want to like,
sure,
like it's not like, we're just Chuck and JEFFSTER, but
sure,
you do have the most excited fans. If you have fans, they're at Comic-Con, and
right.
So just going around the convention center, and then moving around to like some parties and things that were happening in the downtown area, we did sort of get like swarmed a little bit.
Right.
It seems weird to say that, because
we're
like the Beatles or something, but that's where your most obsessive fans are.
That's the crowd for it.
It was intimidating. I'm actually very like, it's really cool, but at the same time, looking back, I just remember being, nobody can like me that much. That's weird.
Wow. All right. Interesting. So not the limelight type, rather. It's
also the first time, and like really having that kind of experience.
Right.
It was a little intimidating.
You're a DC kid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Like, I grew up in Maryland, but in the DC suburbs of Maryland. Yeah.
Right on. And were you always a performer? I know that you went to school for broadcast, if I'm not mistaken. Were you always sort of a comic, if you will, even if you know?
Well, I didn't perform in any plays or anything in high school. And we had this one high school musical show that was really popular as far as like high school shows in the county. It was called Rock and Roll Revival, and I did audition once, and I had to sing Happy Birthday because I couldn't sing anything else, and I didn't get in. So I knew when I was like 14, like there were certain actors I admired. I knew, like, in my gut, like, I don't know if I knew I wanted to be an actor. Maybe I did. It's hard to remember, but I knew, like, I was obsessed with certain like character actors and actors, but I was actually very shy to perform. But at the same time, in school, in high school and junior high, and even elementary school, I was like a troublesome sort of class clown, not like a troublemaker, but a distracting presence in the classroom. I was the class clown. And I remember having to have a note one year with my behavior, so I think that to that degree, I was a performer, but not Yeah.
Were you a bad, like, outside of being, because I think that's where I was, like, I wasn't a bad kid in the sense that I wasn't getting into like real trouble, and teachers seemed to like me, but I definitely was often being scolded for doing something that I wasn't supposed to be doing. Is that sort of kind of the world you fell in, or were you also?
Yeah, I don't think my teachers liked me.
No. All right.
Well, I just,
the honesty. I like it. Yeah.
I don't think they hated me, but I was definitely a troublemaker. When you had to get a note every day to your parents about how your behavior was that day. Well, that was in elementary school. Now I think about it.
Wow. So, what were your parents' reactions to this sort of behavior?
Yeah, I guess, back then, I guess grew up with three brothers, so we were just a terror. And
Oh, really?
so I think that was a part of me that liked to perform, probably without realizing it, and like to get a laugh out of people.
Where are you in the birth order of your
I was
brothers?
middle, yeah.
Middle of three?
Yeah. So
that's fair. And are you guys all pretty close in age?
Yeah. Well, my older brother passed away in 2003.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. So he was 3 years older than me.
Okay.
And my younger brother's 2 years younger. So yeah, we were
all pretty close.
So we were like terrors growing up.
What is the area? So you said you lived in like the DC suburbs?
Yeah, it's a town called Olney. Do you know DC? Are you from there?
No, my Alexandria is my my significant other here, but I'm still getting acquainted with it. But
so yeah, if it's about 25 minutes outside of DC.
And is it pretty typical anywhere America suburbs?
Yeah, it felt, if you've been out like in California, like in the valley, like Thousand Oaks or Woodland Hills or out there, Western, it's like that, it's lots of houses with yards.
Sure.
It was a really great place, yeah.
And also a really great place to just have two siblings close in age and just be generally causing trouble because there's not a lot of, I'm assuming like not a lot of oversight. Mm-hmm. As far as like a lot of freedom.
Yeah, I mean, it was also back then, and being in a suburb in Maryland, it was just I felt like just a very innocent time.
Yeah,
compared to now, and you hear about crazy things that happen in the suburbs, and all stuff with shootings and stuff, and now you realize that can happen anywhere now. But back then, when I was growing up, it just seemed very safe,
Yeah, this has to be 70s, if I'm not
70s.
Yeah. I grew up early 80s, about 10 years. I'm about 10 years behind you, give or take, and on Long Island in the suburbs. I'm gonna assume it's probably fairly similar.
We went to Long Island for. So my parents are from Brooklyn originally, from New York.
Okay.
So I have relatives there, and then we had cousins on Long Island, so we go up there for bar mitzvahs. And,
right, of course, yeah. If you're on Long Island, it's going to be for a bar mitzvah or for like a big giant Italian wedding. Like those are the only two things that occur.
Are you Jewish?
No, but I did grow up on Long Island in the 80s, so I'm Jewish.
You just look like you are. You look more Jewish than me.
I have gotten that quite a bit. I actually only found out within the past 2 years what I am because I never really knew my father's lineage. And because of Ancestry.com, I found like my father's biological father and some crazy thing. And I am like so Italian. Like I am.
Okay, yeah.
I am super Italian.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Jews and Italians, they have a similar kind of energy and look to some degree.
And on Long Island, the only difference is the last name, really, as far as anything. But yeah. So anyway, what I'm getting at was I feel like probably not a wildly dissimilar childhood experience.
Yeah.
As far as like the suburb lifestyle, what did your parents do?
My mom was home, until we all got into school full time, and then she was like a secretary, for this big company. And my dad's an engineer, mechanical engineer.
Oh.
And he worked for the Navy, like for the government, like naval work, dealing with ships and things like that.
Were they humorous? Were they playful?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, my dad's I think my dad has a very, now that I've gotten older and, you try to see like more of the similarities between you and your parents, you know. I think I have my dad's sort of more dry, monotone-ish, telling stories and sometimes telling them too long,
Sure.
Yeah. I wouldn't say they were humorous. They're funny. They're definitely, got great personalities, but I don't know.
Sure. But it's not like you were, it wasn't like a family, a household of laughter every day, and that's what turned you into who you
I don't
were.
know where, I don't even know,
where it came from.
But I think where did this drive to become an actor, performer come from,
What about your brothers? Were they all, I'm assuming it's that close in age, you probably spent a lot of time together, probably a lot of the typical sibling, silliness and playfulness.
Yeah. I mean, my older brother got more of like my dad's sort of smarts and math and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then my younger brother's more of a creative type like me.
Similarly. What did they end up doing, your siblings?
My brother, we went to film school.
Okay, awesome.
Writing and wanting to direct and doing things, all that kind of stuff out here in Los Angeles. And my older brother, had been in the computer science field, so he was doing that kind of work with computers and programming. And
what sort of stuff were you guys into in the 70s growing up? Like, were you, because you mentioned like first time going to San Diego Comic-Con, you're on this massive hit show that's like such a geek culture show. Like everything about the show from top to bottom is like, entrenched in nerd culture. Was that?
No, I was not. No, I was not like that. That's another thing is I felt like such a fraud to my fans because, they thought, like I play this
characters
and all the fans are like a lot of gamers and all that kind of, what you associate with the geek culture.
Right.
And I was nothing like that, except
your character became this hero.
Yeah.
But it was the character. Yeah.
Like, I did like video games. If you think about Jeff and his legacy with Missile Command and all that, I did love the old arcade games. Right. And I never got into gaming really. And it's funny, they gave us an Xbox one year as a Christmas gift, like this Xbox 360. And I think 3 times I played a game on it. I used it to watch like, Netflix or something.
It's your entertainment hub more than it is anything else. Yeah.
And I was just worried like with gaming that I would just get like, I feel like there's so much I want to do. And I felt like gaming I'll get sucked into it. I'll get addicted. So I really didn't do it because I was afraid I'd get addicted.
Are you an addictive personality?
Well, for things like gaming, we're always trying to get the high score and stuff like that, and so I just, steered away from it. I always felt like a fraud in that sense. I'm not a geek, I like the beach. I like outdoorsy stuff. And
speaking of which, I saw on your Facebook, I think it might've been a picture you posted not too long ago of a young buff Scott Krinsky looks like on the beach holding a surfboard, maybe, or something to that extent.
That was probably Ocean City, Maryland. My friend's mother recently was going through a girlfriend that I grew up with, one of my best friends. I guess she was going through old photo albums and found like 5 or 6 photos and sent those to me. And so that would have been probably, mid to late 80s in Ocean City, Maryland. Yeah.
So were you like a surfer jock?
I didn't surf at the time. I surf now, not well. But I did love the beach. I was a swimmer. So my sport through high school was swimming. Swim team. I was a competitive swimmer, and I still swim a lot. I love being in the water.
Really?
Yeah.
That's something, man. I grew up on an island, and I always attribute it to the fact that when I was like maybe 8 or 9, I fell off of a boat. I fell off of a speedboat in the Long Island Sound, and I was terrified of being eaten by a shark. And I think that scarred me for life, to where like I don't mind being on a boat, but there's something about surfing, being in the ocean, to me, that I have this underlying anxiety that I've never been able to quite shake.
I don't know, like I scuba dive, I've done that, several times, and
it seems so peaceful and
it is
and like a lovely experience, but I need to just
But when you scuba dive and you're underwater, and it's especially when you go somewhere tropical, and it's just it's just so beautiful. Like you realize, okay, this is a whole nother world under here. Like this is the only world that these fish see, and it's just so quiet and calm.
Do you still try to do that a lot?
Yeah, I haven't gone lately, but I really want to go. I like going when you can go somewhere where it's you don't
clear.
Have to wear a wetsuit, and it's clear. And
oh, nice.
Really,
is there anything like that even in like Southern California nearby here?
Yeah, there's the Channel Islands and Catalina, and
oh, nice.
I went scuba diving with a friend of mine, another comedian. Do you know Tony Sam? Do you know who Tony is?
Tony Sam. Yeah, I know the name. I probably know the name and the face, but I can't put them together.
He's also a master diver.
Oh, wow.
So I went with him once. We did a Laguna Beach. We did a shore dive, they call it, where you just walk in.
Oh, wow. Like
beach. Well, you have all your equipment, you get all your stuff together, get it on, and then you just walk into the water. You don't go off from a boat or something.
From a boat? Oh, wow. My favorite part about that is imagining people just on the beach when you come out of the water and they're just enjoying the beach. And like, where these people just walked out from the ocean with,
Well, that's a popular spot for shore dive. So people there, I guess, are used to it. But yeah, it is funny because like people, and I've gone to some of those beaches in Laguna just to hang out too. And it's like all of a sudden you just see people just pop up out of the water and walk to the shore.
Right.
And they're
like, where were they this whole time? I've been here for 45 minutes.
Yeah, they were underwater.
Oh man. I mean, it sounds lovely. One day when given the opportunity, it's not the sort of thing that I'm ever going to seek out. I think that's the problem. If like if I'm with people and they're like, hey, we're going to go do this thing. Do you want to come? I would likely enjoy that. But it's not the sort of thing that I'm like making plans to go do because I'm just so damn petrified of the ocean. It's too many movies. I've seen too many movies and TV where bad things happen in the ocean. I have a fear and respect for it, but mostly
you can go snorkeling in a safer spot.
Yeah, I like the idea of a snorkel, fairly shallow water. Nothing too big can fit in the area. I don't know. I digress. Right on. So you weren't a geek. You weren't necessarily into the geek culture as much growing up in DC. But you were funny. You had obviously some sort of a ham in you to be constantly getting kicked out of class, whatnot. Were you a good student otherwise though? Did you have like decent grades? No, really?
I did go to college and everything, but I barely got in there.
You went to Salisbury University?
Salisbury University. It was called Salisbury. It's a Maryland school on the Eastern Shore. So, and near the beach and everything.
Near the beach, right.
But that's really I think that's one of the only schools I got into. But no, it was good.
It's also got to be rough just going to any school whose name is most associated with the food product.
Salisbury steak.
As somebody named Jake Lloyd Bacon, I understand anytime something is associated with food, it's always an issue.
Are you related to Francis Bacon?
I just like to say yes. I definitely am not, because Bacon isn't even a family name. As I mentioned earlier, father was adopted, so I'm not even. I have no Bacon lineage whatsoever. I'm actually a Coletti. That's actually my family's last name. Again, very Italian.
But I did study. Well, they didn't have journalism per se, but it was like a broadcast journalism, and so I think my parents would never, for years they didn't approve of the idea of me being an actor. Not that they had a choice, but they didn't encourage it. And
broadcast was safer for them?
Well, I think I was interested in journalism, and I love like watching reporters, and and I guess there's something to that. Like, okay, well, you're on TV, like there's some aspect of performing to being. I wanted to be, so if I wasn't going to be an actor, if I didn't think that was a logical thing to actually really pursue,
sure,
being a journalist, an on-camera journalist, was a reporter, was kind of more respectable. And I always was also like obsessed with, foreign correspondence, covering, wars and, or just, breaking news and international correspondence. So I thought this, I really like that would have maybe been a backup career. And I did end up, working at CNN and interning there early on during college and after college. And so I thought, that could be a really exciting career. You're traveling, all over the world, all the hot spots.
And you did want to do on-camera work, not like just writing? Or
yeah, well, you do both, but I would have wanted to be and on camera.
So wow, and you followed that all the way to getting an internship at CNN.
Yeah,
so that must have been a very realistic kind of life plan.
Yeah, I worked at CNN during 2 off periods in between, like winter and summer, or went 2 winters. And
while attending school, you mean?
Yeah, while I was in school, because we had a 6-week break, and so I got this internship, and I got to. Well, it was really cool because, I'd go out with the reporters. Like some of them, well, a few of them are not on the air anymore, but they were recently. They just have gotten older and retired or moved on. But I'd go with them on their beats, and then you come back to the network, and they'd tell me, "Hey, take a crack at writing the story," and that's how they would sort of mentor you,
test you. All right, yeah.
And then
wow. And were mom and dad happy at least with this life, with this path? Yeah, because this was way better than being like, oh, I'm gonna go to LA and print out a bunch of headshots, and hopefully this works out.
And when I moved to LA, I did work for CNN briefly out here. I worked at one of my first jobs. They hired me out here as a very low level sort of assistant at the offices in Hollywood.
When did you move to did you go directly from DC to Los Angeles?
Yeah. So I stayed in DC for 2 years, living
after college.
Yeah, because I knew I was going to move out here, so I wanted to save money. And
nice, smart. So you've lived in just the 2 places. LA is home now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's home. Yeah. I mean, I went to New York a lot growing up, so there wasn't this mystique about New York for me, because I went there growing up to see my grandparents and family up there, and also I hated winters.
Oh, were you? So you're a real beach summer guy, it seems.
Yeah, the warm weather. Yeah, it's like, is there somewhere you can live year round where there's not going to be snow, and unless you want the snow, you don't have to deal with it, just that cold, not really the snow, but that cold, frigid.
Right. Yeah. That's me. I've been out in LA now for 11 or 12 years. And before then I lived in Florida for like 3 or 4 years, from New York. And I desperately miss the snow at this point. Like, I've been out in New York for however long, 15, 16, 17 years. Like, I'm desperate for nice snow, but every time I go someplace that's like frigid cold, that there is, and it's like you don't get the benefits of the lovely winter, you just get the painful cold. Then I go, all right, maybe LA's not that terrible.
And you can drive up to the mountains in the winter really easily. Right, and see snow and be in that weather.
So when was like stand up and when was comedy happening throughout all of this, or was it not until after? Or did you always have a foot in?
Well, probably in around 2000. So I was doing a lot of theater at a theater company in the 90s. We were called the Bad Puppets. We did we didn't know anything with puppets, but that was the name.
I love, my favorite part about that is that you've clearly said what you just said to me so many times in your life that you knew the question that was going to follow.
Yeah, I don't know why. I didn't name the group. It was like one of my first friends in my first apartment just happened to come out of this theater school, and we ended up working at the same restaurant, and then and he once he found out I was an actor, he's like, oh yeah, well, I just got out of school and I have a group of friends and we're doing plays and you'd be great, you should join our little troupe. And so we did a ton of plays throughout the 90s that he wrote. Sometimes they were adaptations of classics, but they were funny. They were really irreverent takes on classics, or they were original pieces as well. And we did like a bunch of shows. And then, taking classes and studying. I was doing the Groundlings for a few years, moving through that program. I didn't become a Groundling, but I learned, so much. And just amazing to think of some of the people I was in class with. And then, so kind of when that ended, when I wasn't moving forward with that, and I was a little burned out on the camaraderie, on the theater group, we were all a little burned out too. I always did have this, I thought about stand-up for a lot. I thought, well,
Right.
This is perfect time I met some comedians, and like, I'd always thought about doing stand-up, but I guess I was kind of scared. And then I thought, this is the perfect time to start, because now I don't have to
Right.
rehearse with anyone. I don't have to meet up with anyone. It's just
right. And there's something about having any experience on stage. Obviously, there's nothing in the world like stand-up. Like when you're on stage by yourself with a microphone, it is real sink or swim. And there's not a lot necessarily that's going to help anybody other than just being able to be funny. But having some experience in the theater company, being in front of people, especially if the shows were loose and, like you said, irreverent, that had to lend itself at least to some comfortableness being on stage.
Yeah, I mean, with stand up, I'm always anxious before I go up, and you think, I don't have enough here to talk about,
right?
Nothing interesting, and then once you're up there, you don't want to get off,
right?
But so it's nice. It's like a drug being up there on stage alone.
I always said, for me personally, stand up, there's only two types of shows in stand up. The type where you quit stand up directly before you go on. And then after the set, you go, you know what, this is great, I'll keep doing this. And then where you think that you're the best stand up, and then you go up and then you quit right afterwards. Those are the only two types of shows. Is the why am I doing this? This is going to be, why am I putting myself through this? Oh, wait a minute, that was great. Or, you know what, I belong here. And then being like, no, I don't. That's it. Those are the only two types.
I've quit many times.
Yeah. I still to this day haven't officially. I've been on an extended hiatus, just trying to, concentrate on acting work and making my own film projects and whatnot. But people keep asking me like, oh, so when did you quit? And I go like, oh, never. I just haven't done it in a long time. But
yeah, I mean, I definitely came out to LA with acting was the thing, and stand up to me was just another way to perform. I didn't look, I guess I looked at stand up as a way to perform and be on stage.
Right. It wasn't an end game as much as it was like
exactly.
just a tool.
More of a tool that I loved and had a love-hate relationship with it, but doesn't, I think, a lot of comics do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's unless you are just absolutely killing it for, the first 2 or 3 years, then eventually you're going to fall into the love-hate. Like that's kind of just how it works. You either, you do it so long that you fall out of love with it, or you have a hard time with it from the jump. That's sort of how that goes. But, so you're in LA, you actually had a nice little safety net of at least having CNN to I guess employ you, or at least to do a little bit of work with them when you first got out here. You start doing stand up, and did you just immediately dive into like the grind of trying to act? Because I know like even the role that obviously most people know you from as Jeff on Chuck, like that came from just your relationship with a gentleman who made the OC, correct?
Yes.
From that small performance. So I'm sure that, up until even getting to that point where you're landing that role in the OC, I'm sure that like everybody, you were just in the grind.
Yeah. So I would say the first like 8 years or so, because I came out here in 92. We're kind of a wash, I mean, I was going, in the city, I'm young, I'm just partying a lot. Not like I was never like a druggie, or anything like that. But, just going out a lot. When I say partying, I mean, like you're going out a lot, going to clubs and I was taking classes, just studying, because I took some acting classes in college. I took a class with a lady in DC who was big, kind of in the theater community there, and respected actress. But then I mostly just was doing these plays, and the 90s was, taking classes and just learning from different teachers and doing the groundlings. And then it wasn't till the late 90s, or like 2000, that I just started getting work. I just, sort of figuring it out. And also all the teachers that I studied with always said, you're going to work when you get in your 30s. When you get older, you're a character actor, so you have to just wait.
Yeah.
And they were all right. They were all right. Like once I hit my 30s, the first, it was a lot of commercials. I did a lot of commercials.
Sure. And then, you got comfortable, you got better at auditioning because you actually started booking things. So you didn't go into the room as petrified and desperate, I'm sure.
Still petrified. Sort of I wouldn't say petrified. I like to call it anxious. I feel like
that's fair.
Nervous is you're afraid, and anxious is just the energy of what you're about to do. But so I like to refer to it that way. For me, that works.
Right on. Well, I know that you. I mean, I don't know exactly where the timeline goes, but I mean, you're one of those character actors who I feel like pops up in everything at least once. Like I always see a random thing, whether it's something like
Togetherness.
Togetherness. Yeah. Oh, Togetherness is one of my my favorite shows of probably the modern era, and I'm so angry that it got canceled. I was actually at a SAG pre-screening of it when they got the call that they didn't get picked up for the third season, and it was Steve. Is that the gentleman's name? Steve. It's Mark Duplass and Steve with something with the SC.
Yeah.
They were there doing like a Q&A, and it was so I felt so bad because they were so dejected in the Q&A because while we were watching like episode 2 of season 2 or whatever it was, they like got the call that they were, and I was like, oh god, that was terrible. But I digress. Anyways, you're a character actor. You're getting work. You find yourself onto the OC. And they just liked you so much that they were like, "Hey, we have this other project that's we're working."
Yeah,
on.
So I got that. I got the OC, and it was only supposed to be an episode as this homeless guy, and they bring us home. The Cohens, if you're familiar with the OC, the Cohen family, sure. The affluent Cohen family of Orange County, brings you homeless people home for Thanksgiving dinner, and. I guess, so I ended up doing like 5 episodes. I ended up coming back as this character, Daryl, who just sort of keeps popping up in town at various things. So it was like sort of I guess Josh Schwartz thought I was a funny guy. And
right.
But then that show got canceled, and I was really bummed because it was like the first thing I was recurring on.
And it seemed like they were consistently bringing you back. They finally you kind of got into the rhythm of your character.
Yeah, I had this fantasy of if it kept going. Do you know the movie Down and Out in Beverly Hills with Nick Nolte?
No, not entirely.
So he's like a bum in Beverly Hills, and then Bette Midler, he sort of befriends her, and this rich Beverly Hills woman. I guess he gets sort of cleaned up and.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'll be like that character from that movie.
Well, you were, because you went from Daryl to Jeff Barnes.
Yeah. So the homeless guy got a job. Exactly.
Yeah. The homeless guy got a job working for,
the Buy-More.
Buy-More. I mean, a massive success. Like, I mean, the show was everywhere. You couldn't avoid it if you tried to, especially if you were in the nerd culture. Like I said, it's this smash success. It runs for how many seasons did that show run for?
5 seasons.
5. Yeah. And the 5th one was like a save, right?
Yeah. Every season was like that. We never knew. It was literally down to the wire every season, because it was at the time, like we had this cult following, it was started the same year as Big Bang Theory, funny enough, and there was a lot of that nerdy, geeky culture.
Yeah.
And, but then there was a writer's strike that first season.
Right.
So that affected us a little bit, and we had to film some extra episodes, and we never knew if we were coming back. So we didn't have like these, what were considered amazing ratings. We had this cult audience. And so at the time too, that's when Twitter and Facebook were starting to grow and sort of get more popular. And so we had a lot of Twitter chatter about us and Twitter buzz, and I guess Facebook too, but I remember the Twitter more.
But there was actually like an online support actually started to affect the way the industry worked. And there was actually back in the day, if a show had a cult following, it was because it had like a DVD trade or something like that.
But they barely, they didn't count that as much. They were like, well, it's just that doesn't. They didn't think, well, okay, well, it's got a lot of buzz. It doesn't mean people aren't watching it the night it's on, but they're watching it later. The show's really buzzworthy. So
also, it should be stated too, like around that time, Hulu it really just come out, and like I know I was like an early cable cutter where I didn't watch regular television. I think like I want to say 2008, 2009 is when I sort of like cut cable, and I was like, well, great, everything's on the next day in Hulu. And I know that affected a ton of shows because that stuff didn't necessarily count towards
it didn't count the same
ratings
way.
And
exactly. So that's why and NBC was not, if I'm correct, like they had a terrible, they weren't doing very well at that time. Like we were on at the same night as Heroes, and so they didn't have a lot of other stuff that was generating ratings or even any kind of buzz. So we just got really lucky, that we kept coming back every season, and we had these crazy, like Subway, was a big. They sort of helped save the show one year.
The Subway season is some of my favorite jokes are the very ham-fisted commercials in the program. Like that, I mean, oh my god, it was so well handled and funny and I don't know. There was this level of meta humor that I always thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, to do that. Sub eating contest, which are running Bettis. I think it's from Bettis. Yeah, is his name. Right. The football player. Yeah, just crazy.
So you find yourself on this this hit show with this giant nerd following that apparently scared you a little bit because you weren't the pinnacle that maybe some of the fandom thought you were. Did you ever have any backlash from that? Like, did you ever have any moments of people asking you questions about like gaming or pop culture shit, and you were just like, I don't know, man, I like surfing.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't have any backlash. But it was just funny how people think of you in a certain way because of the way they see you, and
Sure. But you were also such a lovable character. You and Lester, I believe, is that Lester, name, right? Yeah. Like, in fact, you guys spun off on your own into all of these other little, shorts and these little series and these little, like JEFFSTER, the cover band JEFFSTER, ended up superseding the television show Chuck and ended up having its own little life. Outside
we
of it.
We did a little web series spinoff that, again, at the time, that was kind of new for its time. Now you see. You did see that a little bit more starting to happen with shows where there'd be little web series spinoffs or little extras like that.
Extra content.
Yeah. So that was kind of new at the time too.
I have to ask, are you an actual musician?
No, that's another thing. That's another reason I felt like,
I love that.
But see, I feel like that's a compliment.
Does he pay keytar? Yeah, like did he grow up in the 80s being like, yeah, man, what the hell? I studied keytar in my youth, and I thought finally I can use this tool out of my toolkit.
I didn't, but I take that as a compliment because I obviously faked it really well. Because when we did Comic-Con, I remember people asking me if you play the keytar, and I'm like, no, I don't.
Fantastic! You successfully pulled off like the audio Milli Vanilli. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. JEFFSTER.
And I played the keyboard in one. And when we did Africa, that was our first song.
It was like the first. Yeah.
And it was like back debut. There on the keyboard. And I remember talking to our music. I think it was our music supervisor who did a lot of work helping us with our songs. And somebody else, I forget, like a crew member at the time, I was like, well, where should I bang my hands so it looks like I'm playing the keyboard correctly to this song?
You know what? As somebody who is a musician, I don't necessarily play the keys, but I play a variety of stringed instruments and a couple brass instruments. And it is such a pet peeve of mine when it's so blatantly like there's no attempt at trying. There's nobody going like, does this even remotely look real? So huge kudos for you asking the question, trying not to look ridiculous.
Yeah, I wanted to at least look like, well, your hands would be here during this part, and you'd kind of be doing this, and this is how you hold, like, this is how you hold the keytar. And
oh God, it's fantastic. I love the fact, nope, not a huge gamer, not a huge nerd, not a keytar player yet. That's the image. Did you have was there any post Chuck struggle with that of being like, oh yeah, let's get the nerd guy from Chuck? Like, was there any?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with between like the OC and Chuck, I guess I play these sort of like down and out or loner, sort of disheveled characters,
like the drunk, but the drunk who we're all okay with. Drunk, like the lovable drunk versus the this season on AA sort of drunk.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like I'm not, coming from like my upbringing with my Jewish mother, who's very like obsessive about like we had the most perfectly clean home, and I'm very anal about, like, I'm very like just into cleanliness and hygiene, and then
sure.
And I'm like playing, and I'm not I'm not like a druggie or anything. I've a little 420 here and there, and some drinks, right? But so it's just funny when you play like these characters that are so associated that you have this idea of them, and that I play these characters, and sometimes I'll have auditions where I literally, like, I'll do the audition and then I'll take a shower and clean up, because I don't, it benefits me to look a little like I just got out of bed.
I love the idea that you like go to an audition and like, after you leave the room, they're like, oh man, Scott, I mean, he wasn't nearly as gross as we wanted him to be. Like there's a preconceived notion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go there and like be smelly or anything, but it's
yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I just, okay. Well, if I shower before the audition, I know my hair will not look a certain way, or I'll look to whatever. So, and now everything's self-taped, so it's the same thing.
Of course, yeah. I mean, hey, listen, we're doing a podcast. I'm in my pajamas here. Yeah. Listen, I'm not. That's just how this works nowadays. But outside of the most popular of your work, you're in a lot of other fantastic things. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, only because you co-starred a movie with another friend of mine, also named Scott, my good buddy Scott Narver. You're in a fantastic indie called Dave Made a Maze. Yeah. That is, I mean, man, when you talk about like a high concept, indie, low budget, but like incredibly ambitious movie. Oh man, Dave Made a Maze is on the very, very short list of that. How did you get associated with that product? Are you friends with filmmakers, or was that just based off of an audition?
Yeah, no. So Bill Watterson, the director, he was a big fan of Chuck, but he was also someone I'd met briefly through the producer, who is also an actor, who is a good friend of mine, John Charles Meyer.
Yeah.
So they when Chuck was ending, Bill had wrote the script for Dave Made a Maze, and he was trying to get people attached to it.
Right.
And so I was one of those people. He was a fan. He was a big fan of mine, I guess, from Chuck. He's a big fan of that show, and asked me, hey, will you sort of like be attached to this? We're trying to raise money to get it made. And I read the script, and I thought it was like really inventive, and like I was one of those scripts, you read it and you think of Charlie Kaufman, or what's the guy did,
like Science of Sleep. Spike Jonze. Yeah.
I was like, this is amazing. I don't know how you're ever going to pull this off, but yeah, I'm in,
Right. And I can imagine seeing it on paper and being like, you're making this for how much money? Like, this can't, How
are you going to do this? This is like millions of dollars to make this film.
People who aren't familiar with it, it's essentially about a guy who builds a like cardboard labyrinth in his living room, and from the outside it just looks like a couple cardboard boxes, but inside of it it's a full scale labyrinth, and the entire thing is made out of cardboard boxes, and the sets are just incredible. And because of like I said, my good friend Scott Narver, who plays the cameraman, I obviously I know a bunch about the process of making that movie, and how literally there was like one location, and so they were constantly just redressing every corner and the amount of cardboard that was just constantly
they just rebuilt. They just like they use the same little room, and when they rebuilt the room that they were in the maze, they would build that room, then they'd shoot everything for that room, and then build the next room. And
it really is fascinating. It's I like to call it the most adorable horror movie you've ever seen. That's how I like to say. Highly suggest everybody check that out if you haven't seen it. I think it's on. I just noticed today. I think it was on Peacock.
Yeah, I mean, it jumped. All these things, it jumps around. It was on Hulu. It's probably
it was on Amazon.
You're probably right.
It was on Prime. But I think today is on. I noticed today it was on Peacock.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing film, and I really, I think it's one of those films that will just, as people keep discovering it, it'll have this little cult following as well. It already does to some degree.
So, and the cast is outstanding. I mean, like top to bottom, there's not a bad. It's one of those. I feel like it is one of those projects where everybody in it is a fantastic either character actor or an actor from something that isn't necessarily the lead in that thing, and they're all in this together. Every time someone shows up, you go, "Oh my god, it's this guy from that thing!" And it's a fantastic show, fantastic movie rather. But anyways, I digress. So obviously you're still out in LA, you still live here, you're still calling it home.
Yeah.
I noticed that, I don't know if this is a new thing, if it's a pandemic therapy thing for you, but I noticed you've been doing some artwork.
Yes.
You've been doing some charcoal and some paint. Is this new, or is this something that you've always enjoyed?
Well, I always loved painting as a kid. So I painted, I always loved art. Again, all these, you think about the things you did as a kid, and you're just like, okay, well, that was obviously, those were the things, like you should keep doing. So,
right. Yeah, no, yeah.
I always painted, then over the years here, I paint, just for fun, acrylics, some oils. But then I always wanted to just get better. I want to be better, what I do. And so over the pandemic, I've been taking drawing classes.
Oh, awesome.
It's because I just want to get my skills better. And so I've been taking these drawing classes. And so some of the stuff I was posting, we did a lot of like graphite and charcoals and stuff like that.
Nice.
And now I'm in the next class, and we're continuing on, but moving into color theory and all that.
That's fun. And so was this a like symptom of the pandemic? Was it a sort of like, well, there's not a lot I can do? Or was it something you had always kind of intended?
I intended on taking drawing classes, but then when the pandemic hit, I just thought, well, what a perfect time, because you don't have to drive to the school. I was taking them through Santa Monica College, and you don't have to drive there. It's all done virtual.
Online.
It's amazing how we meet once a week, and the teacher is amazing, and we do a little online meeting, and she has all these videos, and you don't have to drive anywhere to.
That's fantastic. And are you doing a lot of work outside of the class as well? Like, do you find yourself in between classes, wanting to work?
Well, we have these drawing assignments that we have to do. So right now I'm focusing on what we have to do for the class, and who knows? I'll just keep going with this.
Yeah, I also enjoy drawing. I go through that thing though, where like every year I buy like a sketchbook, and I go like, I'm gonna draw little something on a page every day, or I draw one of those I buy one of those writing prompt books where you'd open it, and on each page it has something written, and so that way it's like a writing prompt where it's like, all right, like you open this page and it says draw a hummingbird or draw whatever, and so it's like you could just like not think about it, and it's just a way like practice. But I have such a hard time consistently doing it, because I don't know how you dealt with the beginning of the pandemic, but I felt like it looked like everybody on my social media feeds and all my friends all of a sudden had all this like extra free time, and everybody was all of a sudden doing all these extra things. But I didn't feel that way, but I felt like I was supposed to feel that way. So I put all this extra pressure on myself to do all of these other artistic endeavors outside of working on like whatever the next movie is or whatever the auditions are.
Like cooking. I was cooking a lot at the beginning, and I love to cook, and I was doing that and made my share of bread.
Yeah, actually, I think I read that. Did you also go to a culinary school?
I did.
Just a little trade school? When did you squeeze culinary school into this?
So it was around the time, like late 90s, 2000. And I was working in a restaurant, and I was like, well, if I don't make money as an actor, I just want to
Sure.
find something else to do. So I was never going to give up acting, but I was like, I got to find other things to do. So I love cooking. I love, my mom's a great cook, and I worked in restaurants even through high school. I was I always worked in restaurants. So I always had a little side job. And so I thought, well, I'll be a pastry chef. So I went to this culinary school that was out here in West Hollywood. It's not there anymore. And I did their pastry and breads program for, I think I did like 2 different levels of pastry and bread making. And yeah.
And I mean, I feel like that at least is a hobby that has a really good reward when it's all said and done. I feel like that's something that's easy because you go, I want to make something.
Yeah. So I was starting to, I started making a few cakes that I sold. Like they weren't, it was nothing like you see on these contest shows.
Sure.
But it was more like, traditional like layer cakes and whatever. I sold a few cakes. Right. And then I was working with 2 different chefs that did catering a little bit, just being like a little assistant. And then of course, I started finally auditioning more and booking jobs at, booking commercials at first. And so I couldn't commit to, catering or working with a chef because I couldn't, say, oh,
you can promise the
I can't
hours,
show up today.
Yeah, exactly. But you still do it? So that's also still on the docket though?
Yeah, no, I was doing, making, like still follow recipes, and it's still a hobby, but I love to cook, and,
See, that's the sort of thing, man. I feel like it's so, for me personally, like, I don't know. I really struggle with the time management of it all. And I feel like we're similar in that sense where there is a lot of the different things that you enjoy doing. Like you have all of these different facets. And so like trying to figure out a way to juggle it all and you have like some semblance of consistency with any of it. That's my big issue. Like I'll have like 1 month where like, man, I just drew a ton this month, and then I won't draw for, 4 months, or I'll have like 1 month where I'm doing this, playing a lot of music this month, or I've been, picking up my guitar a lot, that kind of thing. But I have a hard time kind of keeping everything consistent.
Yeah. I mean, as an actor, I guess, you don't always have a lot of control over when you're going to be working and how much you're going to be working. Yeah. And I think too, just as you get older, you just realize, especially the pandemic, you realize how precious, life is, and your time is. And so I think it's good to just expand your horizons and make sure that you do the things that you love while you are able to do them.
Yeah, it's fair. I feel like as I encroach 40, I'm definitely starting to notice a little bit more of the like, I feel like it's easy when you're, 20s and early 30s, even when you feel like, oh, all the work I'm doing now is setting up for tomorrow or for whatever. Now that I'm, looking down the barrel of 40, I feel like, well, I don't know that a lot of that work ended up doing that. Like it didn't set me up in the way that I anticipated. And so like, instead of working for tomorrow or next year or however many years down the road, like doing whatever you can for today, I think that's like what I'm trying to kind of accept and focus in on if it's even possible.
Yeah. Or just making time commitments, like telling yourself, okay, well, I'm going to do this now. Then
right.
Just making those commitments to yourself.
Well, I mean, hey, you said earlier that you went to the gym for the first time in a while, the pandemic. Like, I don't know. Is that just something that you've always done in your life? And so you're able to kind of just make it easy and go do it?
Yeah.
That's something that I've gotten so fat in the pandemic, and I'm realizing like, oh man, my metabolism shut off like 4 years ago. Yeah. I was always like the scrawny kid. I was always like the little scrawny nerdy kid. And then like around like 34, 35, my metabolism was like, yeah, you're done doing that. You actually have to work for this now.
Well, I was going swimming at the gym, the pool. They have a pool, So I'm able to swim again. And I started running, and at the beginning of the pandemic, I hated running. I always thought I'm not a runner. I hate it. I can't do it. Like, I'm a water person, but
aquatic.
I am a turtle.
I feel more at home on a bike than either in a pool or running. But I agree.
My brother's a big biker, and I have a road bike, and I do some good, solid bike rides. But I just, with a bike, you have to, there's traffic. Sometimes you have to worry. And with swimming, and even swimming in the ocean, you can just keep swimming. There's no traffic light you have to stop at. Sure, even when you're running, I found this affinity for jogging. Like, I've discovered the runner's high, and I've gotten up to like 5 miles now.
Oh, wow.
But you still have to stop. Thank you.
Right.
And swimming, you just keep going. You just go. You just keep going. There's nothing's going to stop you.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's sort of like the limit of the swim is pretty much just you and your body and your mind.
It's very meditative. Yeah, it's very meditative.
Whereas I suppose, because it's true, like even when I go on rides, so I had been off of the bike for a very long time because I paid what I call the LA tax, which means every one of your bikes has to get stolen when you move to Los Angeles. Yeah. And so I had all of my bikes stolen right out of my garage when I was living in West Hollywood. And I only recently, because of the pandemic weight gain, was like, I need to get back on a bike. So I built a bike, a little Franken bike for myself. But even when I go riding, it is a little bit more of a to-do. Like I need a little bit more prep, because I got to put on, the right clothing. I have to make sure I've got my water, and I've got to make sure I've got a helmet, and I like to put my headphones on, and it's annoying because it screws up with the mask and the helmet. And it's just like, it's kind of a to-do. And then when I go out riding, it is a matter of like, I live in Burbank, right in downtown Burbank. So it's like, I need to ride through a neighborhood to get to an area where it's at least a little bit quiet.
You can do Griffith Park, right? Or the park.
Yeah, but even that's sort of a hike for me. Unless I'm driving, if I'm driving to a place and then dropping a bike, then it's a little easier, because I'll even drive to the valley and do like Chandler Bike Path. Yeah,
the bike path.
But even the bike path, you're still crossing streets. You're crossing all the major, north to south valley highways.
Yeah.
So it is still a lot of lights. It's a lot of stopping. So yeah, I can see that, like, the benefit of just being able to get in the pool and or in the ocean, as you say, like, and just swim. It's also, I think, like, it's I can understand the mental benefits of like, well, I can just keep doing this. Like, and I bet you there's like a nice mental strength that comes with that. Whereas like nothing is forcing you to stop but yourself.
I mean, I'm around Hollywood, West Hollywood area. So I also will bike to the beach and back, so I'll bike towards Culver City, and I'll get on that Expo Line bike path, which is that's a great bike path.
I've been dying to go down there and do that ever since I built my new bike. I've actually been like on like the LA County like bike groups on Facebook and shit like that, and I'm trying to see where the places are, because I'm still I don't know where the bike. I've always just been like a city bike guy, where I'm like, I just ride up and down my neighborhoods.
The Expo Line path is great, because you do have to cross some streets every now and then, but it's just a really straight shot. Get to the beach, and then I'll do the beach all the way down sometimes to
Redondo or something. Yeah, when I first moved to LA, that was like one of the first things I did my first couple of days out here, and however long that was I literally took my bike to the beach, and I had no idea how long that path goes on for. I mean, I could be wrong. I want to say it's like 16 miles or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Like somewhere around that. And I was so pleasantly surprised at just how long it went on for, completely uninterrupted. Yeah, depending on what day and what time of day you're there, there's other people, but it's not like.
There's not. I don't know, where else, but I don't think there's a lot of other places in the world or in this country where, when you ride along that path and the ocean's right there, and it's like I never get sick of it. It's
you've like me, you've never lived somewhere that's not by a beach. I'm not as much of a beach person as I'm taking it. You are, though. And I don't know what it is. I feel like I've always taken it for granted, maybe growing up on Long Island and then moving out here. Like I can count on one hand how many times I'm at a beach per year, even.
Well, I don't go there to like just lay out in the sun necessarily,
Sure.
but I love going swimming in the ocean. There's nothing like just the waves and surfing or just being in the ocean, with the waves and the salt water. And I probably sometimes I don't get there as much as I want, depending on what's going on, but I love knowing it's there. I would hate to not feel like I was landlocked.
Is that like a real solo experience for you? Is that something you do by yourself, or do you bring?
I've done it a lot by myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just because I'm really spontaneous, and I'm like, today I think I'll go bike to the beach when I get,
Nice. Yeah, that's another thing that I've learned throughout, my I guess really it started in like my mid 30s where I've always been like this sort of need for social creature where it's like, oh, I like to go do things with a person or with, this. And I don't think it was really until I got to LA, of all things, believe it or not, it was like the LA Zoo. I live right next to the LA Zoo here.
Yeah.
And I took like my family was visiting there one day, and I was like, man, this place is like really nice looking. Like it's also like a botanical gardens and whatnot. And I bought like the annual pass, which is like dirt cheap for, you go twice. And since it was right across the street from me, essentially, I just started going and I just started like walking the zoo like every morning by myself. And I started bringing my camera, and at one point I fancied myself a photographer, and that's another thing I still enjoy doing. And it became this thing where I was like, oh, like here's something that's beneficial to my mental health that lets me sort of escape the grind, but it's also just me. I'm doing it by myself.
Did you get friendly with any animal?
Versus, you know what? I feel like there's a few. I sound like a crazy person whenever I do bring people there, and I go like, oh, listen. For a while there, the fossa knew who I was. Like, then I was so convinced that some of the animals recognized me, and like some of the younger chimps when they were born, I was like, no, this little Johar knows who I am. I'm sure it's all in my head. And more so, I became friends with a lot of the people who work there, and they would be like, oh, this guy's here again.
Well, they're animals in the zoo as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I could see though why, something like just heading to the beach by yourself and like having that swim is just incredibly beneficial.
Well, I also figure, you can't, it's especially, I feel like when you're out here and everyone's got so many different things going on,
right.
And I've done this with traveling, like you can't, if you just wait till you can do something with someone every time. So sometimes you just got to take off and do it yourself,
That's true. And there is listen, I'm not one of these people who dislikes LA or the people of LA. Like a lot of New Yorkers and Northeasterners have sort of this gripe with it. But with that said, there is a very real, stereotype of the LA flake in which try to make plans with somebody out here and lock them down. You get a lot of maybes. You get a lot of we'll see. You get a lot of text me the day befores. And then you do something by yourself like that. You take a bike ride or you go surfing or whatever it is for you, and then you get all those friends who are like, oh man, you got to call me next time. You got to call me. And then you do, and they're not available. Yeah, that is true. I have gotten a lot of that ever since I started talking on the podcast and other places about, oh yeah, I built a bike. They're like, oh really? You gotta let me know when you go for a ride. And I'm like, I will. You're not gonna come with me. But that's great, man. So it seems like you've been, for the most part, been able to escape the pandemic unscathed as far as your mental health is considered.
Yeah,
so many other things. Have you been able to do any work throughout the year, or has it been sort of like, no, this is just the me year? Where
no, I've been going after work. I've been trying.
Sure, yeah.
But I did a film. It's funny. I did these two things right before the pandemic. Well, I did this cute little short that's starting to play at some festivals called Rockabye Baby. It's really great little short film. And then I did a indie feature called Bed and Breakfast, and that's still going through post and all that. And
right, and that was shooting like the week of the beginning of the pandemic, right?
Yeah. We literally finished shooting. I was already done the day things were starting to shut down, and they had 3 more days. And if they shot that following week, and had they had to go any farther, they never would have finished a film because they would have not been allowed to shoot But the funny thing is, the last day for me was that Thursday, my last day of shooting, and it was the day, I think it was a Thursday, whatever. Do you remember there was that Lakers or Clippers game where they told everyone to go home at halftime?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It had to be March.
It was either March 14th or 15th.
Yeah.
It was a Thursday.
So my birthday is actually March 15th. And I remember the beginning of the pandemic because that's a Sunday. So it had to be probably the 13th, the Friday prior, I'm guessing.
Okay, then it might have been the 13th, yeah.
Because my big thing was like I announced like a last minute birthday shindig, and then they were like, everybody, as of Monday, there's a stay home order. And then I was like, great. So I was like the very first quarantine birthday.
Wow.
Of like, oh, great. There goes everything. So it was still very bizarre.
Was that your 40th?
Yeah. No. That last year was my 37.
Oh, okay.
I just turned 38. So okay. I'm still, when I say looking down the barrel of 40.
So you can still have a kick-ass 40th.
I'm rounding, yeah, and I'm hoping to in 2 years, because that's when.
But I remember coming home that night. I was coming home that night from shooting, and I went to Trader Joe's to get some groceries, and it was like
chaos.
When that chaos. That was that right. First night. Everyone, I knew like, okay, something's going on. Like, you don't just send everybody home from like a basketball game at halftime. But I went to Trader Joe's, and it was like a madhouse. People were filling their carts, overflowing their shopping carts. And I was like, and I did get a very like sort of unsettled feeling, God, what's happening.
I was sort of out of the loop with what was occurring in supermarkets as well. Like, I had no idea that was a thing, even though I knew, the stay-at-home order was looming and whatnot. I was unaware, and I went to the Ralph's over here in Burbank, and it was a similar situation where I literally, and we were like out of toilet paper, like fresh out. And I went to the store, and I took a photo of the aisle and sent it to Alexandra. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm coming home with toilet paper. And there was it was a similar thing where it looked like supermarket sweep. People just running through with carts overflowing.
Yeah, and I ended up buying more.
Well, because it's, and that's the problem, of course, is that it forces you to be like, well, shit, now I need to make sure that I'm covered. And so even though none of these people should be buying this much anyway, if there might not be any because of these idiots, I have to join these idiots. Yeah. But right on. So you still been able to do some work, and you got some projects on the horizon.
Yeah.
And he's drawing, he's baking or cooking, both. You say I always feel like a pastry chef is always a weird thing, because isn't it baking mostly?
Well,
aren't you mostly a baker?
Think about if you're making a cake, or if you're making a tart, like these. All right. Think of going into like when I think of a pastry chef, and you go into like a French.
You know what?
And you see those or Italian bakery, and you see those amazing.
Lots of cheeses and
tarts and berries, and
All right.
It's a real artistry. I can't do that, but I definitely, I love it cooking, and there is a creativity to pastries, and
that's fantastic. Well, listen, despite your humbleness, I'm thoroughly jealous of everybody who you live with or is in your immediate circle who's gotten to enjoy that through the pandemic. We here at the Dragon's Den have been ordering quite a lot of random dessert items throughout the pandemic, because we're just so desperate for the activity that we've tried like every bakery and like place in the area. At least now we've dwindled it down to the good ones, but a lot of people selling bad pastries here in Burbank. That's all I'm gonna say.
dried out bad pastries.
Well, anyway, Scott, thank you so much. This has been such a blast. We're kind of over time here, but it was so enjoyable chatting with you and kind of playing get to know you, learning about what makes you tick. And I gotta say, I'm thoroughly surprised at the general LA beach guy vibe. Wasn't expecting it.
Oh, what were you expecting? Some nurse?
What do you expect? I mean, listen, the presentation is everything. You're putting a bubble. You're putting a slot. Are you still doing stand up, by the way?
I'm starting to try to work my way into some shows, and I'm sort of craving that again,
Yeah. I've noticed that the pandemic has reminded me of just how much I miss crowds.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether or not that's going to lead. Yeah, exactly. I don't know whether or not that's going to lead towards getting back on stage in a stand-up format, or if I want to maybe lean into a variety show or find some place, some theater, small theater, black box nearby that I can maybe put on like a monthly variety thing. I'm definitely noticed in this pandemic. Yeah. In fact, my last guest was Drew Johnston, who was one of the writers of and performers on the Chris Gethard show for so many years. Yeah. And I was telling him that the pandemic, the Chris Gethard show became like such a obsession for me, because like all the narrative movies and TV shows became like part of the grind, because it was like pandemic living, that I started rewatching that show. And it was like, oh my God, like a small group of like-minded weirdos all laughing and enjoying comedy and things together. And I don't know, I started craving that crowd again. So we'll see. Maybe we'll cross paths one day soon in an actual theater space.
That'd be great.
But I urge everybody once again to check out to all of Scott's work, including Dave Made a Maze, which again, I can't tout enough how great it is. Is Chuck available anywhere to stream? I think it's on Prime.
Yeah, I think it's on Prime right now.
I looked.
It's definitely streaming somewhere. I think it may be on Prime right now.
I mean, it's NBC programming. You would assume it would end up on Peacock eventually?
Probably whenever it's done with Prime.
Contracts.
I bet it'll end up on Peacock, yeah.
But please follow Scott. It's at Scott_Krinsky on both Twitter and Instagram, right? Are there any other things that you got on the horizon? Any other things that you want to plug? I know it's a weird time for plubs.
Yeah,
a year after the pandemic.
I'll be tweeting about it,
Yeah.
The film, actually, you can check out the short I did. It's Google Rockabye Baby. I'll be posting. It's playing at festival. So if you're home and you want to go watch another digital film festival.
Yeah. A lot of festivals I know this year have gone the digital route, where they have just sold, whether it's sold with tickets or stream stuff live at a specific time frame.
It's a really little clever short, really great director.
So check all that out again. Scott_Krinsky on all social media. If you're enjoying these shows, please do us a favor and throw a 5-star rating, or any rating. Throw a fair rating, whatever you think is fair, for Apple Podcasts. Check out elaboratepod.com for official merchandise. We just released a brand new Create Art shirt based on my Clarion call that comes at the end of every episode. That's available now. The shirts, masks, mugs, all sorts of fun stuff there. And find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jake Lloyd Bacon. And Scott, again, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope one day we can do this again in person. Now that the world is getting back to normal, maybe we can come back for a round 2, and
sure.
maybe I gotta go to the beach and give a swim or some snorkel dive.
We'll do it at the beach.
And that's what we do. We do it live from the beach. You'll be all nice and energetic, and I'll be winded from the 10 yards that I swam in the ocean. But again, super, super fun. Thank you so much for being here. As I say at the end of each and every one of these episodes, please, listeners out there, create art, not content. Be an artist, not an influencer. Scott, thank you so much for coming. I love you.
Love you, man.
Hey, everybody. Jake here from Dragon Wagon Radio, and I'm here with Mark E. Extreme and Skeeter Skyflyer.
Did you just have to read that? Okay, how could you possibly not know who I am? Because my name is Mark Extreme, 15 plus years undefeated backyard wrestling entertainment champion and owner, and the host of On Your Mark. So I'm offended that you don't know who I am, and I'm here with the shit on my shoulder.
As Skeeter Skyflyer. I mean, a lot of people don't know me, but it makes sense that people don't know you too.
Look, everybody. I'm a pretty big deal, okay?
Well, I mean no disrespect, Mr. Extreme, I assure you, but you mentioned you have a podcast on the network called On Your Mark. What exactly is On Your Mark?
On Your Mark is the best wrestling podcast on the airwaves. Every Wednesday, we are deep diving into wrestling topics, like giving you a perspective like you've never heard before, because there's nobody that can give you a perspective like I can.
Well, a lot of people could give the perspective that you give on wrestling, but they're busy being wrestlers and being really successful in the ring and working and being in front of millions of people every week on television and in a crowd.
There's nothing different.
All right, I think I get what's happening. It's comedy. You guys are just doing a bit. Mark, you're like every 90s wrestling kid stuck in the past. And Skeeter, you're like the idiot little brother type who just loves everything, no matter how cheesy it is. I get it. You're playing characters. You guys are like a pro wrestling version of Jiminy Glick or Tony Clifton.
Well, I don't know who the hell those guys are. And, frankly, I'm kind of offended because I take this business very seriously, and there's nothing funny about what we do, right, Skeeter?
That's right. So tune in every Wednesday. A new episode drops weekly, covering new topics on onyourmarkshow.com. Also, wherever you're listening to your podcast right now.
It's Dragon Wagon.